Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Bibb County Commission. I'm still going back to the school systems here. Macon-Bibb County Commission meeting. Today is the Tuesday, March the 9th. The time is now 9 o'clock, and we'll begin our meeting today. We have a moderate agenda today, but certainly worthy items to be considered. This time, I'd like to officially welcome everyone here. We do have a quorum and call this meeting to order. Our first order of business today is to approve the minutes from the Committee of the Whole from February 28, 2021. Can I get a motion? Motion by Commissioner Wilder, second by Commissioner Wynn. Any discussion on those minute items? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the item, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously. We'll move on to items 2, which is items for financial consideration. The first item, 2A, is an ordinance to amend the coroner's organizational chart for purposes of converting one part-time deputy coroner position to a full-time deputy coroner's position to provide for transfer and supplementation of funding therefore. That is my motion. Can I get a second? Got a second by Mayor Pro Tem Clark. Before we have any discussion, I know we have our coroner here, Coroner Leon Jones. Coroner Jones, if you could come up to the podium, please, sir. Good to see Mr. Jones, and thanks for being here today.
Good morning.
Could you just give a brief explanation of what you're requesting here today for the commission to do?
Well, first of all, good morning, everyone. Thank you for letting me speak. I done ran out of money, which is kind of constant, and as our conversation yesterday, one of the reasons family won't claim bodies. 2, when they do claim the body, they don't have compensation. 3, there are bodies that just don't have in the family. Now, mind you, Family and Children's Services approved $700 for cremation, okay? The longer it takes for Family and Children's Services to approve $700, the more my storage bill goes up, which is $100 a day. So the mayor suggested, along with the legal counsel, that anybody that's dead 5 days get a court order. So actually it's 3 days, but he's giving a 2 days grace period. Is that correct, Mr. Mayor?
That's correct.
Mr. Mayor want anybody that's dead 5 days or longer get a court order. After we get the court order to the funeral home and tell them have them cremated. Right now we have 8 unclaimed bodies right now. The majority of the funeral home that's in the rotation for the county are Bentleys, Robinson, Harts, and Daniels. Fortunately, they've been cleared out. I called the funeral home yesterday. They only have maybe 2 or 3 bodies that need to be cremated, and they're still waiting on Family and Children's Services. So that's some of the problem right there. Growing up poor, I try to be a good steward of the tax dollars. I don't waste tax dollars, and people know that. And one of the reasons I'm over budget is because I've been told I don't ask for enough in the beginning. But it goes back to my upbringing. I don't waste tax dollars. You find that out when I asked for Keith Moffitt's car. Instead of buying a new car, I got Keith Moffitt's car. I manage the tax dollars like I manage my own money. I spend it wisely. So I don't waste money. But I'm asking for money. I don't have money to pay the vendors. We got 1 invoice yesterday, but we haven't got 2 more invoices for the vendors. So I don't have any money. I don't have money to pay one of my employees. One of my employees' salaries comes out that money. I don't have money to pay one of him. So to the commissioner, I don't waste money. I never have it, I never will. As it stands now, you know.
Coroner Jones, let me interrupt you.
Yes,
sir. I know you like to talk, and I like to listen to you talk, but I want to get to where we're here today for. Right. The first thing is, Coroner Jones and myself and the council have met, and we've come up with a process. And as you remember, this is not on the agenda, but just to kind of give you a little background, we have seen a substantial rise in costs for storage of deceased bodies, from $56,000 a year some 6 years ago to $350,000 on the average the last several years. So we believe we've got a solution on that. It's going to save us a couple $100,000 by going through the court process. And we have a process for that. So we're not talking about that today. That's not part of the budget we're talking about. What we're talking about is your request for a part-time deputy coroner position to be a full-time deputy coroner's position. If you just tell us briefly why you need that, so the commission can consider that item. Your budget is going to be something we talk about at a later time.
Right now, as it stands, we have had 100 and 79 calls go to the coroner's office since January 1st. 179. We were up 50% compared this time last year. Last year, we was right at 120. And that's one of the reasons I need Ms. Stone to be hired full-time. That's the reason I'm asking the commission to approve that. We just need the help, Mr. Mayor. We need the help. That's all we do.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Ms. Moore, do we have a appropriation to go on this too, as far as a financial commitment? Are we aware of, is this just not moving money in the budget, right?
It should be, but I can't work on that, so but it should be, because if it's a part-time person going to full-time, there should be some additional money, so it may need to come back before you.
Michael? Attorney McNeil, if you'll come up, please.
Hold on, man. I won't have to have it till you give me a minute. You got enough space. There you go.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is partly a supplemental from fund balance and partly a budget transfer. The supplemental amount is $10,300 from fund balance, and then there's a transfer of $7,000 within his budget from salaries part-time to salaries full-time.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Watkins has a question.
Yes, sir.
So, and I get it. We're in the middle of a pandemic. I've heard that more people have died, I believe. Suicides are up, murders up. Makes sense. I think you just mentioned that your caseload is up 50%. So it makes sense to me that your budget will have an increase. And I get what you're saying. I have no problem with changing a part-time to full-time. But how does that affect the vendor and payroll situation that you were mentioning? Or is that something that's not as vital, sounded important?
Well, the vendors and payroll, the funds are deleted because the amount of time the body was in there.
Mm-hmm.
That's what affected the vendor situation.
So if you're unable to do, and I guess I'm not sure line item, but in general, I know last year we allocated like $530,000 to the department.
Is that was that my entire budget now? Is that was everything included?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's just the coroner's office 2021 was 546, 146, or is there another line item that should also be considered?
Julie, is that the entire budget? Is that contracted services, salaries, and everything? Total amount of everything then, right?
Okay. And I know, if I'm correct, in 2020, the actual spend was 609?
Yeah, he's had up and down years, it's largely driven by that contract service line.
And in 2018, it was 619. So it seems like this would be a extremely up year, so I'm just not surprised that the whole budget would be off. So I guess in addition to the 17,000 that's been mentioned today for the full-time, part-time, what else is needed to get us through the budget year successfully? Because we still have the obligation of funding a constitutional officer to responsibly pick up the bodies and do all that type of stuff.
Yes, sir. That is what the mayor and the coroner were referring to in the beginning, that they are talking about that as they build the budget for the upcoming year. And just to correct, so on this issue, it would not need to come back because this issue is just to take the part-time to full-time, which is the resolution you have in front of you. All other budget requests, they are discussing that now, and if we need to come back before June 30th, we will. But if not, we will address that at the end of the year budget and then put it in next year's budget.
Well, the compensation now that we need to pay the vendors, right? I don't have any money to pay the vendors.
Right. That's what y'all. That's what y'all are talking about now.
Right.
But so, if I'm understanding you right, I think you just said that you didn't have money to pay vendors for this month. Am I understanding you right?
Right.
So how do we solve that problem? Because I heard you mention
That's what
next year's budget, which is July-ish.
That's what we're working on now. So to solve for that problem, we have some other options we're looking at. So that's what we're working on now.
Commissioner Watkins, I've got a plan.
I'll yield. But that didn't clarify. But yes.
Well, I'll provide clarification if you want me
Okay,
to.
yeah.
We're working on it. We just found out about this issue on yesterday. Coroner Jones contacted me on yesterday. We spoke. We met with the finance director. We're looking at moving some money around to find out why he keeps coming up short on his budget each year. His last request is not really necessarily a vendor. It's an employee mileage that was about 3,200 miles traveled in 1 month. So we're working on that process because there's like 56 cents a mile. We do believe because of the uptick in bodies and deaths that we've had over at least the last quarter, well, actually the last year, we may be able to use some COVID funds, CARES funds related to that to help supplement his budget and then work with him on building a proper budget for next year. Also, this additional $100,000, $200,000 has been coming before that has been going outside of his budget. We've had to supplement that because of the failed process, the way the bodies have been handled now. We believe we're addressing that process in a more efficient way to save the county about $200,000, which will free up some money to increase his budget to an appropriate level. But as far as this month's vendors, we're already addressing that, and that'll be taken care of. Any additional supplements will come back before the commission at the next regular meeting.
Okay, how is it being taken care of? Because how is it being taken care of?
We're trying to move some money from from the COVID funds to his budget to take care of the vendors.
Okay, so how much would that be?
Well, right now, it's only a few $1,000s right now that he needs to have moved. He was only short, what, $1,800, Coroner Jones?
Yes, sir.
For this amount. But like I said, we got notice that his budget just ran out just recently. We as you remember, about 2 weeks ago, we gave him $100,000 for those other vendors to take care of those bills that he had, and that's already been blown through. So I think Coroner Jones is satisfied that we've made great progress in being able to address his needs, and we're going to have that taken care of on the short term. But the better conversation is going to be how we adapt that for the next year's budget to make sure we don't come back time and time again for new information or new money from the coroner to the commissioners.
Yep, because as it stands now, I know one of the invoices, maybe 2 invoices from the vendors hadn't been turned in yet.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know what the amount is. It's not outrageous because you heard the conversation yesterday. A lot of them been cremated, so that's good news.
Commissioner Tillman, you had a question?
Just a question and a comment. Don't want to always compare departments, but just looking back at previous budgets, all the way back to 2017, I think up until now, I think the only year that his budget probably was a little bit more than animal welfare was in 2018. But it's just interesting that the coroner's office budget is less than animal welfare. I do have a question that always concerns me. And former county manager Dale Walker would often say this to our engineer: "You're the engineer, why don't you just sign it? Because projects would be held up." So as the coroner, why within 24 to 48 hours can you just sign off to have bodies cremated? It sounds as though there's a glitch or something somewhere that we as a commission may need to correct for you or realize your authority in that if it's about waiting on money from DFACS or whomever, but it seemed like as the coroner, that question has always been interesting. Why would it take 5 days when an average funeral takes place in 5 to 10 days, but we're waiting 5 to 7 days before we can officially cremate somebody? Why can't that process happen within 24 to 48 hours?
I'll answer that question, Commissioner Tillman, just because I want to make sure, Coroner Jones. Number one, the law requires if no one claims the body, you have to wait at least 3 days by law. In order for us to be named next of kin, we have to go through a legal process with the court by filing a motion for equitable relief to the court and wait for the judge to sign that order. The process before we have changed this process, and it's something that I picked up on upon reviewing previous invoices, we have people being held 61 days. Bodies being held 61 days at local funeral homes, costing $100 per day, $6,100. And then we had a pickup charge of $350 for picking up that person, the deceased person. So we're talking about $6,450. So I thought it would be more efficient and fair to the person to claim him, because he does make efforts to try to reach out to the family, to increase the time from 3 days, which is a statutory minimal requirement, to 5 days before he gives it to our attorneys. And then we get the judge to sign an order giving us the right to cremate that. Before, they've been waiting sometimes a couple of months on a $700 fee from DFACS for cremation. But it didn't make financial sense to me to pay $6,300, $6,400 for something that should have cost us, maybe saved us $700. So the answer to your question is, we have legal obligations. That's why he can't do it on his own, number one, and he's got to have a court order, and it takes at least 3 days before we can wait to start that process. But I think we agreed on 5 days. We thought that was fair, because some people do live out of town, and some people do try to make arrangements, but we felt like that was probably the least amount we could do.
Well, as a follow-up, we know that people, and especially during this pandemic, is dying. So it sounds like every case is being pursued through the court, as opposed to saying locally in our order or ordinance that this can and should be the requirements, by getting with the commission and the judges to give that pre-authority and pre-authorization. And maybe that would eliminate some of this as well, as opposed to just every case has to go before a judge to be signed off. Is that something that we need to possibly look at to do in advance and get a pre-authorization from it? Because in all the years that I've been here, there's the coroner, we never hesitate to try and help and fund the coroner's office. And he didn't come up often asking us for stuff, and that we know that, these things are going to happen. But so I'm just trying to make his office, his department, and our lives much easier. And how do we do that, Mr. Attorney? Is that possible?
I don't know if you're talking about me or to Attorney Groover, but
Well, you're the mayor. You're acting as the mayor today.
Well, I just
when I
tell
say
you what,
Mr. Attorney, I'm talking about the county
our
attorney.
process is working with Attorney McNeil. He's involved in this, and he's here today. He's the one that's been handling this with the courts. We want the people to pick up their own, their family members and take care of them themselves, and we do. Leon does, Coroner Jones does make an effort to reach out to them. We have many that refuse to pick them up because they don't want to pay the financial tag, and we're left holding the body. So this process, we believe, is going to be more efficient, more fair, remains compassionate, but also saves $200,000. I don't think anybody is in dispute that the coroner needs to have a proper budget. I think we're all in agreement to that. But unfortunately, he's short once again, so there's been some issues with his budgeting process that we're going to have to address. That answer your question, Commissioner Tillman. Commissioner Howell, you have a question?
Yes, I guess the conversation's gotten a little convoluted today, but today we're here to talk about this going from part-time to full-time, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is there a motion on the floor?
Yeah, we got a motion in a second. We still have one other question.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
one of the fees you mentioned was $350 transport.
Yes, sir.
That's only when the body goes to the GBI and the cab.
Okay.
If it goes to the GBI Macon, it's $200. You only $350 when it go to the cab. And the GBI sent us a letter saying all homicides must go to the cab. So that's $350. It's $200 when you go to GBI and Macon. I just want to clarify that.
Thank you, Coroner Jones. Commissioner Wynn, you have a question?
Yes, sir. Coroner Jones.
No, I'm not a commissioner.
Come on, I don't know, you don't want to be that either, do you?
So
But
what-
I just want to say first to you, thank you for the hard work you do. I respect you, and blessings to you for what you have
Thank
to
you.
do as a job. Many of us wouldn't want to do that. The topic here, or the point that we're trying to make, is you need some extra help on
Yes,
board
ma'am.
there. So basically, taking your part-time person to full-time, will that give you the resource to help process things faster?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, that's what we're talking about, and I'm all in favor of that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wynn. Commissioner Watkins?
Yes, sir. So, I guess I wanted to ask just two things, well, three questions. why currently is it a 60-day-ish process for us holding the body, and if you have access to do 3 days now?
It's not, all of them are not 60 days.
What would you say the average is?
20, and it goes back. Family Children's Services.
What's that mean? Give me elaborate.
$700.
They were holding the body the entire time, waiting on a $700 fee.
We're holding the body until they waiting on the $700 fee. If Miller call and say, hey, this is
Will
less,
pay us $700.
yeah.
Over.
If Miller calls and say, this is Lester Miller Funeral Home, I got Leon Jones that was found dead, he's homeless. He has no family, period. He was found on the bridge dead, he's homeless. He would send Family Children's Service the paperwork. They should give Mr. Miller the $700 then, right then. No ands, if, buts about it, okay? If he calls and says, hey, this is Miller Funeral Home, I got Leon Jones that was found dead, he got a daughter that's a nurse, he got a son who works for the railroad. They're not paying that, and they shouldn't pay it, okay? Now, if he called back and say the family won't have anything to do with him, well, I call the coroner. Hey, this is Leon Jones. I'm sorry to tell you about your father being dead and everything. He's at Miller Funeral Home, and they need their compensation. Well, Mr. Leon, my father ran off with a woman 30 years ago. Call the woman he ran off with and let her pay for the cremation. Click. So we back to square one. Yeah, it just don't make sense.
And so now we step in and take over as the county?
$100 a day.
So now the solution would be in that situation, after 5 days of back and forth, the county would step in and claim the body as next of kin?
According to what the mayor wants, after 5 days, the court order will be filed.
Okay.
5 days, 2-day grace period. That's how that goes.
Okay, and the obligation to the county and I guess perpetuity with that cremated body at that point is what?
The funeral home gonna have to cremate the body, Commissioner.
The funeral home.
The funeral home gonna have to cremate the body. If the body been in their storage for 10 days, that's $1,000. That's $100 a day.
No, I understand. So the funeral home cremates the body, but then those ashes become
Goes
the
down to
county?
the basement where the other 350 boxes
Okay,
of
we
ashes
have a
are
place
at.
for 'em. Okay, understood.
350 downstairs, 5 in my office, and
And-
one in the trunk of my car.
So my last thing, and I guess it gets back to the shortfall that you mentioned in the budget. And apparently it's not as serious as I thought it was. But if there is something, if I'm understanding correctly, the coroner's office has access to the CARES Act line item to address any emergency shortfalls that may occur in April, May, or June. Is that?
We believe that, or otherwise we'll come back to the commission and ask for additional funding for us.
All right, and that access to the line item requires no additional acts by the government at this time.
I don't think so. Thank you. We got a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously. Be sent to consent agenda. Thank you, Coroner Jones. We're going to move on to item B, which is an ordinance to authorize a transfer within the Information Technology IT Department budget in a total amount of $100,000 to provide funds for network security and licensing costs. That is a sponsored motion by myself. Can I get a second? Second by Commissioner Wynn. Any question in that regards? Hearing no questions, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. Who's that? Tillman? That motion is 8-1. Thank you, Commissioner Tillman. It passes. Move on to item C, which is a resolution authorizing acceptance of Bill Terrell Conservation Grant in an amount of $15,000 with no local match requirement to be used for parks and beautification for the natural bird habitat. That is my motion. Can I get a second? Second by Mayor Pro Tem Clark. Any discussion on that item? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously to be sent to the consent agenda. Move on to item D, which is a resolution authorizing acceptance of the discretionary grant from the Peyton Anderson Foundation in the amount of $5,000 with no local match requirement to be used by the Bibb County Sheriff's Community Fund to assist in working with homeless persons in downtown Macon area. That motion is sponsored by myself. Can I get a second? Second by Commissioner Pro Tem Clark. Any discussion on that item? Commissioner Lucas?
Yeah, thank you. I know that they previously, that we got a $5,000 grant. I don't know whether it was from Peyton Anderson or Community Foundation, one of them. And there was a plan put in place as to how to best utilize it. How will this be done? I know that there are two schools of thought. One is you just run them off, but that's not the prevailing school of thought, given the warming center and other kinds of things that are put in place. So I just wondered how this was going to be used, because I would have a serious problem, as I did in the past, when there were folks who simply wanted us to get rid of them. It's not that simple.
Yeah, I think the sheriff said he've already used the funds they gave him before from the Community Foundation. He indicated that most of these funds will be going for transportation, reuniting people that are experiencing homelessness now back with their families, and also arranging for transportation to and from the warming center, as well as furnishing any excess money for officers that are actually doing security there at the warming center.
Okay. Is the Homeless Coalition back together, and are they functioning?
I
I
believe
know
they're-
there was a group of organizations that had a collaborative, the Homeless Coalition.
As far as I know, they're still together and they're still meeting on a regular basis. Okay. So
Thank you.
that is what the sheriff told me on yesterday, what his intent to do with the money and the funds were. Commissioner Clark?
No, my question was Commissioner Lucas. I just wanted to know what the funds were enumerated for.
Thank you very much. We do have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously to be sent to the consent agenda. Our final item under this topic will be E, a resolution authorizing the acceptance of grants funds in amount of $1,500 from the Community Foundation of Central Georgia Booker Ray Fund, with no local match requirement, to be used by the Parks and Beautification Department for the purpose of replacing and adding new roses at historic Rose Hill Cemetery. That is my motion. Can I get a second? Got a second by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion on that matter? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the matter, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously, sent to the consent agenda. At this time, we're going to move on to the executive session. We do have a few items to discuss in the executive session. The consultation with the county attorney or legal counsel to discuss pending or potential litigation, settlement, claims, and administrative proceedings or other judicial actions brought or to be brought against Macon-Bibb County or any officer or employee. That is my motion to go into executive session. Can I get a second? Got a second by Commissioner Tillman. Any discussion on that item? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries. We're now in executive session. We'll be retired back to the mayor's conference room. Time is now 10:14. Can I get a motion to come out of executive session? Got a motion by Commissioner Lucas, second by Commissioner Wilder. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. We now have executive session. We're going to move into new alcohol licenses. First item is 4A, new alcohol beverage license for Ricky's Taco Shop, located at 515 Cherry Street, Macon, Georgia. That is my motion. Can I get a second? Second by Pro Tem Clark. Any discussion on that item? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries, will be sent to consent agenda. Item B, new alcohol beverage license for Family Food Mart, 2793 in Montpelier Avenue. The chair has decided to remove that item from the agenda today. Item C is a new alcohol beverage license for Haley's Lounge, located at 2308 Ingleside Avenue, Macon, Georgia. That's my motion. Can I get a second? Got a second by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion on that item? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously, to be sent to the consent agenda. Move on to item D, which is a new alcohol beverage license for the Quick Trip, located at 4934 Sardis Church Road. That is my motion. Can I get a second? Commissioner Howell has a second. Any discussion on that item? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries to be sent to consent agenda. Item E is a alcohol beverage license for S&S LLC DBA Quick Shop located at 6394 Zebulon Road. As my motion, can I get a second? Commissioner Wynn has a second on that. Any discussion on item E? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion passes unanimously to be sent to consent agenda. Item F, new alcohol license for Kitchen Pride Food Store located at 3101 Columbus Road. The chair has decided to remove that item from the agenda today. Item G is a new alcohol beverage license for 3726 Jeffersonville LLC, DBA as Jeffersonville Grocery. That's my motion. Can I get a second? Second by Commissioner Lucas. Reluctantly by Lucas. Any discussion on that item? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries. Be sent to consent agenda. Item H is a new alcohol beverage license for Fast Track located at 260 Tom Hill Senior Boulevard, Macon, Georgia. That's my motion. Can I get a second? Got a second from Commissioner Wynn. Any discussion on that item? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries. Item I is a new alcohol beverage license for Emory Highway, DBA Exxon Food Mart, located at 2630 Emory Highway. That is my motion. Can I get a second? Second on Commissioner Howell. Any discussion in regards to that item? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously to be sent to consent agenda. Item J, new alcohol beverage license for the New Taco Girl, LLC, located at 894 College Street. That's my motion. Commissioner Wynn would like to second the Taco Girl. Any discussion in that regards? Here, that sounded good. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously to be sent to consent agenda. Item K is a new alcohol beverage license for Manic 2021 Inc., DBA Bloomfield Mart, located at 4175 Bloomfield Road. The chair has decided to remove that item from the agenda. Item L is a new alcohol license for Chevron Food Mart, located at 1106 Rocky Creek Road. This item was previously tabled at the earlier meeting. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to remove that from the table. Got a motion by Commissioner Wynn, second by Pro Tem Clark. This time, we'll have some discussion. I do know we have an interested party here today. If you could please approach the podium. Identify yourself by name, and then your relationship to the previous owner, please.
Chaitali Patel, and to the previous owner?
Yes.
That's my husband.
Your husband?
Yes.
Okay. We had previously set this item to discuss for alcohol renewal, and we tabled that item for additional information. And you said you just purchased that building, or you took over from your husband? Can you please explain? Excuse me?
I'm just representing my uncle. He took over the building. I didn't. He couldn't just make it out there. He's not that good. So I just figured whatever question you guys have, because I was helping him with the new process, so I may be able to answer some questions you guys have.
So your uncle, I understand your uncle is the now owner of this business?
Yes.
And he purchased that from your husband?
Yes.
Okay. Any question for commissioners? Mr. Watkins?
Husband and uncle, so they're brothers, right?
No.
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 Okay. So when it comes to the previous owner, who I understand that would be your husband, that when it came to the co-am machines in the Georgia lottery, that building 1106 Rocky Creek was in compliance denial. Could you talk a little bit about that case with the state?
The building was, because I wouldn't have any idea, because he was just owning that. My husband used to own that store, but I had nothing to do with it. But since my uncle took over, he had issues with English and stuff, trying to get through it, so he asked for my help, and I said, I'll help you.
Yes, so, yes, the 1106 Rocky Creek Drive is a lottery location, is current. As of August, they have cited for what they call a compliance denial.
Let me interrupt you there for
Yes,
a
okay.
minute. We've had lottery at that location for almost over 2 months now.
Okay, so 2 months, yeah, so last August. So you've owned the building for 2 months now?
Yes, I don't, he does. We leased that building.
Okay. So there was a compliance issue with the state last year. Can you speak a little bit about how that got resolved and why, what happened?
As I said, I don't have an idea as what was going on last year with the previous owner, even though he was my husband. I used to work at a bank, so I didn't, participate in what was going on. I'm just, at this point, I'm just helping my uncle out.
Okay. So you don't know if any fines were paid or?
No, I don't,
Okay.
to be honest with you.
Thank you. Are you?
Okay. Can you tell me just, and I'm trying to ask this in the best possible way, what was the reason that your husband sold this to your uncle?
Well, he just wanted to get rid of it. He just wanted to get rid of the business for now because he's got other businesses.
Okay.
So he just wanted to hand it down to somebody else.
Okay. Now, if your uncle who owns this business, you say that he has a language barrier, is that correct?
Yes.
Is it possible for him to be at a further meeting, you translate for him?
Yes.
I think it'd be best for the commission to actually hear directly from the owner instead of someone acting on their behalf. Is that the general understanding? We do have this item lifted off the table. We need to take a vote on that first, or?
Yeah. Bring it off the table and then you talking about.
Can we leave it on the table?
It's off, we got a motion and a second, we haven't voted on it yet.
You can withdraw the motion, put it back on the table.
Yeah. This time, I'd like to make a motion, withdraw that off from the table, lift it off the table, and recommit it to the table. Is that, okay, we'll do that by agreement. So we'll have our attorney get in contact with you to notify you of a previous meeting. At that time, we request that the actual owner be here. Even though there's a language barrier, we need to have someone there to translate so he can answer our appropriate questions, okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our business in that section. We're going to move on to changes to the code. We have a couple of those today. The ordinance to amend Chapter 4 of the code, provide for additional distance requirements for the license of business selling alcohol beverages by the package to go near churches or recreation centers to terminate the license privileges of vice marks. This motion is sponsored by Commissioner Paul Bronson, Mayor Pro Tem Clark, and Commissioner Virgil Watkins. One of you like to make that motion? Motion by Commissioner Bronson. Do we have a second? Second by Pro Tem Clark. This time, I believe Commissioner Jones has a question. Commissioner Jones?
Yes, sir. I had an amendment to it. I understand the clerk's got copies.
This time, I have Attorney McNeil, who's been working on this ordinance approach. Attorney McNeil, if you could just give a brief basis for the original motion, ordinance drafted by the three sponsors, and then we'll have a discussion on that and allow that time Commissioner Jones to make a supplemental motion if he chooses and gets the votes.
Okay. Yes, sir. So, this ordinance proposal would make a number of changes to the alcohol code relating to distance measurements for various uses. Let's see. If you look at the exhibit on the ordinance, it's got a version of the code with all the changes tracked in it, and so that makes it a little easier to see what's changed. So Section 1 amends Section 436 of the code to say that no Vice Mart is granted any new or additional license under this chapter, and no Vice Mart shall be authorized to renew any license previously granted under this chapter upon expiration thereof. So any Vice Marts that are operating, their alcohol licenses will expire at the end of this year, and they will not be entitled to renew. And then provides that any Vice Mart applications that are submitted and accepted in error are deemed incomplete and will be returned with a refund of the fees. Section 456 is amended to say that at renewal, at license renewal, anybody that's operating for package-to-go sales, if they're not a grocery store, hotel, motel, specialty store, drugstore, gas station, or private club, they have to get a new distance measurement form every year from engineering as part of their renewal process, and that'll confirm that there's been no new development within a prohibited distance of the business. Amends Section 497 to provide that the sale of liquor, distilled spirits by package to go shall not occur within 100 yards of a church is the current rule. This adds the church property, any property owned by a church, as well as a county recreation center property, and provides that anybody that is operating a liquor store within a prohibited distance will not be authorized to renew or continue their license upon expiration thereof. And so they'll get the distance measurement every year to confirm that that's still current. There was a typo on Muni Code in the heading of Article 5, and so this just removes the word any from the word any malt beverages, just removes an extra word. And then lastly, Section 122 relates to the retail sale of wine and malt beverages. And so it provides that there's now a 100-yard distance measurement for churches, church grounds, and county recreation center property for new applicants for wine and malt beverages packaged to go, and provides that with the exception of those protected businesses I mentioned earlier, grocery stores, hotels, motels, specialty stores, drugstores, gas stations, and private clubs, that anybody else will not be authorized to renew or continue their license upon expiration if there's a prohibited distance violation that comes up during the year. So that's the ordinance as proposed, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Attorney McNeil. So let me just see if I can give the short version of what you just said compared to two ordinances. One I'm calling the Bronson motion that we have, ordinance that's on the agenda. That actually has a distance requirements for the recreation centers, the churches, including the Vice Marts, liquor stores, et cetera. The difference between that and the proposed supplement or amendment by Commissioner Jones is purely the legacy provision, which will allow, the first one would not allow someone to be grandfathered in, to use that term, and the second one would allow someone to be grandfathered in. Any other differences other than that?
That's correct. And so under state law, there is no grandfather protection for 100 yards from a church, but this would allow for protection from church property or rec center property or other similar uses for liquor stores. It would add that back in as to beer and wine sales. And then the other thing is, because you're adding that back in, there's no need for the businesses to go and get the distance measurement check done every year, and so it takes that section out as well.
Okay. Commissioner Jones, did you have any questions in that regard or make any comments on that?
Yes, sir. According to my conversation with Attorney McNeil, even though that is the state law, I understood you to say there's no prohibition from us amending or having our own policy as to a grandfather policy. Is that correct?
So what the state law says is you can't sell or offer to sell liquor within 100 yards of a church. And
Right.
so that's the church building itself, that's not the church grounds. This ordinance expands that to go the entire property owned by the church, as well as some other uses that are already in our code. There's rec centers that are being added, there's alcohol treatment centers, and I think public libraries are in our code as well. So as to all of those other uses, you can have the legacy provision, but state law will still control as to the issue of 100 yards from a church building. There is and cannot be a grandfather provision with respect to liquor stores from 100 yards from a church building, but for all the other uses, there can be.
But didn't you tell me that we can amend that and have a legacy provision? We can amend it whereby they are grandfathered in if they were already there.
As to everything else, we can, but not as to churches and liquor stores, church buildings and liquor stores. And
Well, I
that's because that's
misunderstood you
controlled by
then.
state law.
I just don't see how we tell a business that's been there a long, long time that you can no longer have that right, that privilege, even though you've had it for 20 or 30 or 40 years. And all of a sudden, there's a church that moves within I don't see how we can do that.
That's state law. I do know that I've sent Attorney McNeil, the state government has proposed a potential resolution allowing counties to reduce the amount of distance requirement on some of those. I'm not sure if it's liquor stores or not, but I know at least some of the alcohol sales to actually reduce that. So I think they see a need and they're looking to address that. But current law basically says that even if someone moves in church near a liquor store, then upon renewal, they don't meet the distance requirement, and you're not supposed to renew them.
I don't see how we get away with that. That's I don't see how you do that. So you say there's legislation being proposed now that would lessen the amount of yardage required? Is that what you said?
Yes.
I can speak to that,
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor.
Attorney, yeah.
So, under state law right now, there's a provision that says for beer and wine sales, it can't be within 100 yards of a school or a college campus or a college.
Right.
There's an exception existing in state law now that allows local governments to reduce that distance prohibition as to college campuses only. And the bill that Mayor Miller is referring to would also allow local governments to reduce that distance requirement as to schools. So right now, for example, under state law, you can't open a new convenience store right next door to school. It has to be at least 100 yards if they're going to sell alcohol. This would allow local jurisdictions to pass an ordinance to say, we'll allow a smaller distance barrier, 50 yards, or even no distance requirement as to that, but you can't do a larger one.
So how do we enforce that? So all of a sudden you say, okay, you've paid for your license for a year, so what are we going to do? And within 30 days, you're going to go out and say you've got to cease and desist selling malt beverages, distilled spirits, even though you paid for a license? How do you?
Upon renewal.
What's the program for that?
Upon renewal. Their license is good for the entire time you approve it that year, unless it's revoked before then, but the law doesn't operate to revoke that. It just means you may have some issues upon renewal. So where we're at now, we do have this pending motion and second on this first ordinance. Mr. Jones, I understand you'd like to make a amendment to that. So if you want to make your amendment, we'll see if we get a second. We'll move forward.
Well, let me ask a question. So who's going to determine whether they are in fact 100 yards? Who's going to make that measurement?
We have surveyors that are certified in the engineering department, and they would make that measurement.
Okay. Okay, I'll withdraw my amendment then.
Pro Tem Clark.
It was regarding the amendment. I just wanted clarification, just to simplify the conversation, that this amendment, the amendment that's been withdrawn, would not at all be able to affect the church distance due to state law.
Between
Church
churches,
building, excuse me.
churches to liquor stores.
Churches to
Now,
liquor
the
stores.
proposal still adds churches to convenience stores, and you
Okay.
can affect that. But churches to liquor stores is under state law, we're preempted.
Thank you.
We amend it to say that?
It already does. That's what your proposal says.
Okay, okay.
Yes, sir.
So you want to move forward with your proposal, Commissioner Jones, at this time?
I'll leave it in place then.
Okay. Do we get a second on that motion? Second on, who's that? Mr. Tillman? Okay. We have a second on that. So make sure we understand that Commissioner Jones' proposal cannot apply to liquor stores, but it certainly provides to the other alcohol, beer, and wine sales. And his motion gives a legacy or grandfather protection. Is that correct, Attorney McNeil?
Leaves in place that legacy protection that's already there.
So we understand we have a motion and second on his amendment, and we're going to take a vote on that first. We've got a motion and second. And let's do a roll call on this, and we'll start with Commissioner Wynn unless there's further discussion on this. Commissioner Bronson?
Which one are we voting on right
We're doing the amendment now to see if it passes or fails, and then if that does fail, we'll move on to yours. Okay? So let's do a roll call vote, starting with Commissioner Wynn.
Is that to leave the grandfather clause in there?
Yes, ma'am.
I am in favor of that.
So that's a yes.
Yes,
Mr. Bronson?
yes.
No.
Commissioner Lucas?
No.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilder? Yes. Commissioner Howell?
Yes.
Commissioner Watkins? No. Mr. Tillman?
Yes.
The amendment passes. What's the vote?
6-3.
Amendment passes 6-3. take a separate vote?
Yeah, that's just the amendment.
Okay. At this time, we're going to have to take a motion, entertain a motion to accept the entire bill as amended motion. Commissioner Jones, is that your motion?
Pardon me?
To accept the entire bill.
The entire bill, yes.
Okay. That's your motion. Get a second? Commissioner Wynn? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay? Okay. That motion carries. Commissioner Lucas?
Thank you. I'd like to be added as a sponsor of this. I think I spoke in favor of it initially, but didn't get my name on as a sponsor.
Okay. You want to be added as a sponsor? We'll take care of that.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next item, which is an ordinance to amend Chapter 22, Article 2 and 5 of the Code for the purpose of establishing Macon-Bibb County as the exclusive collector of commercial solid waste, provided for franchise fees for such collecting activities. That motion is sponsored by myself. Can I get a second? Second by Commissioner Wynn. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to be added as a sponsor on that too, please.
Thank you, Commissioner Wynn. And we have come up with a new process that allows us to do that on the fly instead of having to go through all the paperwork. So thank you for your cooperation in that matter. This time we'll let Attorney Groover give an explanation on what this franchise fees agreement is and answer any further questions that commissioners may have.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, commissioners. This is this proposal does two things. Number one, it combines several sections involving franchise fees for commercial garbage pickup into one location. It's just more logical. And number two, it provides for the fees themselves to commercial carriers who pick up commercial garbage. Right now, that's our commercial waste in the county is picked up right now primarily by independent commercial garbage companies, and it's regulated right now by our ordinances in several different locations. So the first thing we're doing is moving anything involving franchise fees involving garbage to Article 2 from Article 5. The substance of this, though, is really to provide for the county establishing a process by which if a commercial carrier wants to pick up commercial garbage, they have to get a franchise agreement with the county. Right now, that process is in place, but this makes it explicit. It's D under, if you look at your Section 1, Section 2226D, Macon-Bibb County shall have the authority to grant an exclusive franchise agreement for the collection and disposal of commercial solid waste for developed business premises. Developed business premises are defined in our code as basically what you would think they are, which is a commercial establishment open for business. So that's a new addition to that section. The rest of that section is, as written, is what exists now. So what would happen if this passes is that a company desiring to pick up commercial solid waste in downtown Macon or anywhere else would come and apply to the county. And if you look on the second page of that, under Section 1, 2227, they would pay a $2,500 application fee. The proposal is it would increase from $300 to $2,500. And the reason for that would be it's been a long time since we've looked at those application fees. As you know, the county has to process those fees. They've got to consider the standard by which they issue the applications to franchisees. They've got to set up quarterly and potentially yearly reporting for the income coming in. So that's a fee that is charged for that application process. Looking at 22-27C in your ordinance, that is a new provision. That adds a 5% of total monthly billing collected as a fee on that particular waste company who is picking up and disposing of commercial solid waste. That is the fee that we would charge. That is very standard. We've looked around at different counties and cities. That is a very standard fee. It ranges anywhere from 5 to 10% of monthly billing collected by that company. So the process would be, if this is passed, is that the company would engage and enter into a contract with, say, a downtown business, the Rookery or whatever, which they're doing now. We're just not, we're having to service that business through police and fire and streets, but we're not really getting paid for it. So they would enter into a contract like they have now with that business, and they, in order to do that, they would have to come to us, apply to us for a franchise agreement, and then we would set up a process by which every month they would have to submit to us their monthly billing of that month in the county, and then we would charge 5%. They would basically submit the 5% fee with their documentation showing how much they billed in the county that month. Again, that's a very standard procedure that happens in Albany, Palmetto, Union City. We looked around at other counties and cities, so this is a fairly standard process. Our ordinances now allow this to happen. We're just not doing it. And again, the basis of this type of fee, the 5%, would be to compensate us for the services we have to provide. These are not residential pickups. They're downtown. They're big trucks. We have road maintenance. We have liability issues. And again, that is the basis of why we would want to charge them in this way.
Yeah, it's not just downtown.
No, it's not. It's throughout the county. But that's, so those are the big takeaways are we're raising the application fee from $300 if it passes to $2,500 a year. It would have to be renewed every year. And then if a franchisee, a commercial franchisee, wants to operate in our county, they have to pay 5% of their billing in that county every month.
Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir. And Attorney Gruber, where these funds go where? The general fund?
Commissioner Jones, these funds can go wherever we designate them to. In theory, the thought behind this was approximately good over $400,000 per month is billed out by these collection agencies in Macon-Bibb County for commercial trash. Our 5% fee would be around $20,000 or $250,000 per year. We would want to use that money to go to solid waste to actually pay for all the disposal at the new convenience centers. So basically, they would be paying to dispose of everything. Wouldn't cost us any extra money. We believe we spent slightly under that amount doing that job ourselves for the county, and outside tipping fees to other places. So that was the thought behind that, is to keep that into the solid waste, since it's all related.
Makes sense.
One experience, I didn't mention this, one experience other communities have had is when they do this, there's competition that is fostered amongst commercial carriers, and it typically lowers the price to our citizens and gives good service. So that's another benefit of it.
This is another revenue stream that we looked at to help finance the county without raising property taxes on individuals. We've also seen it because of decreased competition that Attorney Gruber said. The prices have actually decreased in areas for business owners. But also we have to, we maintain the roads for these large trucks. It's environmental concerns. The trash itself, as we know, became a concern. We're not capable anyway. We don't have the trucks, the equipment, the manpower of doing this financially, and we don't have a landfill any longer, so it just makes financial sense for us to do this. Commissioner Wynn?
Yes, just a point of clarification. The annual fee is going to go from $300 to $2,500. Is that correct? Is that pretty standard too?
That's pretty standard.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's been a long time since we've looked at that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wynn. So we do have a motion and a second. I don't see any other questions on there. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed? I'm sorry, Commissioner Watkins, do you have a question?
Voted, it's fine. Are you?
You can go ahead. You can take the vote.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay? Okay. Motion carries. This time we'll move on to contracts for I can't say that. Contracts for renewal. A resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a third amendment to lease agreement with Due South Investments LLC to extend the lease for 7 years and to convert the lease to a fixed-term lease with 3% increase on the annual base rent due. That motion is sponsored by myself and Paul Bronson. Can I get a second? Second by Mr. Bronson. Attorney Callens, if you come forward. Just brief information for you, and we'll see if any questions for the attorney is, this is an item that y'all had that was tabled, I believe, in November, December, concerning the public defender's office that's now in the BB&T building directly next to the courthouse. I met with the public defender, discussed his needs for that. There will be some upgrades. They've been in that building a long time and need some upgrades, painting and carpeting, a little more space there. But this lease had terminated. I looked at several other areas in Macon-Bibb County to see about the possibility of moving at a better price, and none of them meet the needs. This is very convenient to the courthouse. The public defender office wants to stay there. It's comparable with the district attorney's office. This lease had automatic renewal terms in there, and that's what it's attached as an exhibit there. Attorney Callins has been negotiating that contract out. I actually spoke with Earl Bars through Due South, who is the owner of the building, and we believe that this rent is reasonable and is certainly marketable, and this is the amount that we can negotiate to continue those terms. If we had to go outside that area, it would also increase the travel expenses, the gasoline expenses, the parking expenses, and the public defender's office would be inconvenienced by having to drive to a location each day instead of walking across the bridge to the courthouse. So these are the reasons that I'm in favor of that. If you have any questions, the attorney will be answering any questions in regards to that contract at this time. If you have any questions? Hearing those questions, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously. Will be sent to the consent agenda. Thank you, attorney. Okay, we're going to move on to item 7, which is Reverend Ronald E. Terry Way. As the ordinance of dedication fellowship drive is Reverend Ronald E. Terry Sr. Way in honor of Reverend Ronald E. Terry Sr.'s contribution in his community. That's sponsored by Commissioner Lucas and Commissioner Bronson. Commissioner Lucas, would you like to make that motion? Yes. And Commissioner Bronson, second. We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Lucas, I'll hear from you.
Thank you. As many of you know, Reverend Ronald E. Terry Sr. passed away some time ago. His church membership delivered to us a letter requesting this particular action to be taken. It is a very short street there. Many of you are familiar with it. Across, on Coliseum Drive, the fire station and there's a nursing home on the other corner directly across. Well, it's that little section there, and I believe New Fellowship owns probably all of the property in there. So I want to thank the legal department for always being ready to get the information and to put it together so that it makes us look good, and we appreciate that very much. I'd like to take credit for a number of these bills that they draw, but I like to give credit where it's due, and Commissioner Brunson and I are co-sponsoring this. It is in the district that he represents, but I don't know, I probably knew Reverend Terry a lot longer than you did, and he was just everybody's support system. And so when his church asked for this, then we were more than pleased to make that request, and we'd like to ask for, excuse me, y'all, for unanimous approval of this change.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucas. And this does not come with any kind of financial obligations. Just let everyone know. Commissioner Tillman?
Well, we're not going to fight over Reverend Terry today, but Reverend Terry lived in District 9. Let's be clear. I just about
His
that.
church is in District. Okay, we have a motion and second. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion does carry unanimously and be sent to consent agenda. Commissioner Lucas, if you want to reach out to members of the family for their presence next week, please let us know, because we're not open to the general public just yet, and we do have a guard outside that does not let people in the room. That's what he's been instructed to do, so unless we know ahead of time who's coming. So thank you. Thank you for that. We're going to move on to our last item on the agenda, which is a reducing jail population that Commissioner Watkins, Bronson, and Commissioner Lucas has requested to be placed on the calendar. This is item 8A, a resolution requesting immediate action to reduce the overall jail population during the COVID-19 pandemic to allow for improved social distancing, safety, and health care. That motion is sponsored by Virgil Watkins. Would you like to make that motion, Virgil? Got a motion by Virgil Watkins, a second by Commissioner Bronson. Got a motion and a second. Commissioner Watkins, we'll hear from you.
And today I wanted to offer a amendment or a substitute based off of, we had a few conversations on this issue over the past couple of weeks, and kind of in response to some of the things I was hearing, mainly this is going from a operational request for action into a showing of support for the actions that our court system and judicial and LEC, sheriff has been taking. Just kind of briefly go over it. In March 1st, we had about 850 inmates at the Bibb County Law Enforcement Center. About 500 of those, based on the sheriff's presentation at the work session, were eligible for early release or eligible for release. And nearly 250 of those 800 were being held for probation or parole violations. Since January 2021, nearly 80 inmates have been removed from the LEC after those files were reviewed by the district attorney, state court judge, and mayor. Masks have gone from being 50 cents in the LEC commissary to being everyone receiving a free one at entry. In 2019, we did a study on the bond amounts. A Mercer student by the name of Emily Poole found that nearly 90% of our bond amounts at the jail were less than $50,000, and about 15% were amounts less than $3,000, indicating that many folks being held were for low-level charges and offenses. Even prior to the COVID-19 crisis, the Macon Judicial Circuit had started and was favorably considering the implementation of a cash-free bail system. I just want to re-implement. We support these ideas because we understand that it's important to reduce the economic harm during this pandemic. There was a report in January 2021 from the Brookings Institute that noted that rental prices in Macon-Bibb had increased by 11% in the last 12 months. Unemployment and the amount of jobs available in our area have decreased by or increased by about 3%. Some of our census tracts, the small businesses within them, have seen revenue decline by 49% since in that November report by PolicyLink. That same report by PolicyLink USA noted that 3 in 10 of our black males aged 16 to 24 are disconnected from work or school. 2/3 of our black women led households spend greater than 30% of their income on rent. 6 in 10 of the county's black population live in these high poverty areas, which are limiting our access to jobs and services. And also, black workers are 3 times as likely as white workers in this county to be working full time and still be economically insecure. All of that being said, our court system has the ability and has been exhibiting ways that they're able to reduce economic harm, and this is resolving that we're, as the Macon-Bibb County Commission, are supporting them in those efforts. Thank you. And so
Thank you, Mr. Watkins.
open to any questions. But
Just want to make one point, well, a couple of points, but one point of clarification for myself. On the third whereas, it says that since January 2021, nearly 80 inmates have been moved from the LEC after files were reviewed by district attorney, state court judge, and mayor. I haven't reviewed any files and released.
I don't. So I know at our last work session, you made mention of that you and Judge Sims had reviewed files. He had made mention of 5 to 7 that were of non-executive or of some category that he let out, and there were 3 more that were having cases heard that week and I assumed the way y'all were talking that y'all had looked over it together, so maybe it was just the judge. And then separately, the district attorney in an article on Channel 13 mentioned that her review had saw about 60 plus people be moved from the LEC. So that's how I came up with that number based on those. But yeah, I can easily move your name if you need me.
Yeah, I certainly don't want mayor in there. The also I've had trouble verifying these inmates have been released, these 63 inmates. I've asked the sheriff, he's not aware of who they are, what they are. I'd just like to know what type of inmates have been released. This has nothing to do with you, just want to make that clear. And unfortunately, one of the inmates that was released back in September is the person already charged for murder, and actually is the alleged defendant in the murder case of the 16-year-old that had been released on bond, and just September. So after being released from bond in September, he allegedly shot and killed a 16-year-old just a few months later. I do agree with some of the information contained in here, but it certainly can't support all this information here. And of course, I just received this today. I know you may have sent it out late yesterday. I apologize. We were at the Capitol until about 12:30 last night.
Congratulations on Olaf.
Thank you. But certainly, y'all discuss as much as you want to. I don't get a vote in the matter right now. I think there's still some work to do on this as well. But I'm encouraged by the conversation we had last week, and I'm also encouraged that you went back and made some changes to the resolution for this week. But I would like the mayor taken out of there because I don't want to misrepresent any conversations I had. But I certainly would like a list of all the people who got released so we can verify that people were released, if they were, and what they're charged with. But I can probably make that request myself.
So, and again, I guess that as far as I know, that was based off, again, I think the district attorney and the judge has the files of the cases that they're reviewing. But I did want to bring up something that is important when we talk about bail and bond, that again, there are 500 folks in our jail that if they had the money, they could be released from jail. There is one individual, so again, but $80,000 bond is keeping more than a few murderers in our jail. If they own property, they would be free. Is that the actual best system to keep people that we're scared of out? Because it just becomes purely about your economics, not whether or not you're dangerous or have the ability or the intent to go out and kill or maim your witnesses. But it's just based purely off of if you own property or have people out here that love you, you can get out of jail. If you don't, you stay in. It might be just as much as $3,000 keeping you in. But yet again, a murderer has the ability to get, all of the murderers have bond amounts, they just can't afford to get out. Is that exactly the way we want to be doing things? And I appreciate the judicial system for reviewing this, that they're committed to, and because I think there is a better way, but it's an interesting conversation because we're so used to attaching money to the punishment. But yeah, I'm sure the information is available on the folks that were released. I was basing that off an article from Channel 13.
Yeah, I'm not faulting you at all. I don't think it's available. I think that's the problem is if we've heard about this number, but I haven't seen any substantiated proof that it even exists. I want to know who got out. I've looked at the jail screen. I can't tell. I've asked the sheriff. He can't tell. I've asked the
district attorney.
I've asked the district attorney hasn't replied yet. I asked the Superior Court judge. He hasn't. He says he can't figure it out. Just need to know. I'm not challenging her for, saying she let people out. I just want to know what kind of people we're letting out. That's the main part. I know someone has made that request and they said they couldn't give it to them because it was a violation of HIPAA. So I certainly need to have that information. I think we need to have that. We can talk about cash bail another time. I'm certainly not going to have that discussion today. There's ample reading that you can read both ways. You and I could disagree on whether it works or don't work and whether people are going to show up or not. Bonds are set based on the seriousness of the crime. So if someone has a large fine, it's not because they can't, they're poor or can't afford or anything about their circumstances. It's basically to protect community and ensure the safety of the victims and to make sure they show up for court. And that's why they're high. But I guess I'm not trying to debate you on this right here. I just want to let you know a couple of problems that I have and I don't get the vote. Commissioner Tillman?
Mr. Mayor, you're having a lot of conversation about this, but you keep repeating you don't get a vote. So, years ago, there was something in Bloomfield called Rolling Thunder, where I challenged then Chief Mike Barnes to say he had arrested over 100 people in Bloomfield and Village Green. And I was president of the NACP, and I challenged him to show it to me. And I said, if you show it to me, I'll resign. And I discovered then that there was citations were considered arrests. And so they had not physically actually arrested 100 people that particular weekend. So when we see, because, Channel 13 would have issue, a lot of us read newspaper articles, see something, and we just think it's the gospel truth. And so I have no reason to doubt what the district attorney has shared with the media. But I would just say that some folks that's out on bond and that's been out on bond wasn't necessarily released from the jail. And I think some of those conversations, you being the mayor could have with the DA, but to sit here and say publicly, well, she hadn't responded to me back, but I've talked to the Superior Court judge and whatever, is a slick way of trying to throw somebody under the bus, and I just don't think it's fair. And it's not up to you, as you stated, unless it's a tie, to agree or disagree with our resolution, but to sit here and chastise it and then say, but you don't have a vote and we can discuss it, when you have a lot of discussion on it, I don't think that's fair. We don't do a lot of your resolutions like that. Most of the folks that, you talk to behind the scene just agree with you, and it's certain one of us that don't know about it that have questions, and it make it seem like we're against what you're doing. We're not against anything. I'm not against anything. I'm trying to work with you in this commission, but I don't think we ought to do constitutional officers like that to say you're not agreeing with it or that they just haven't returned your call, but you go and name all the other people that have verified for you that they don't have any information. And I just don't think, that's the way you start. You are new in this position, and the DA is new, and I would take both of y'all at face value of what you're sharing with the public. And so let's just be mindful of that. Thank you.
I appreciate your concern from Mr. Tillman. A couple of things is, district attorney is not a constitutional officer, by the way. The other thing is, I am a member of this commission, so I do get to speak. I just don't get to vote.
She's elected, sir.
I get to veto or I get to break a tie. So I do think that I add something to the equation so other people may have the same questions. So you don't have to agree with me. I'm just giving you my opinions. I'm trying to move this forward by eliminating some issues we have so we can work out an agreement. But certainly, once again, I'll tell you, I don't get a vote until such time it becomes necessary. So I'm just trying to participate as one of your commissioners in the discussion, as always. Sometimes it's not fair, but life is not fair. Mr. Lucas.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like for us as a commission to go ahead and express our support for the overall goal of this resolution. And I'm wondering if anybody has any problems with expressing support for the actions of our law enforcement in reducing jail populations during COVID, improving social distancing, safety, and health care. Is there anybody that has a problem with the caption of this?
Commissioner Howell. I'm sorry, I got Commissioner Wynn next.
Okay, so you have a problem with expressing support for reducing the overall jail population during COVID to improve social distancing, safety, and health care. Is that what?
I do. I'll comment, but yes.
Okay, well, if you have a problem with it, then it's kind of you're kind of a lost cause. Then I was trying to figure out a way that we could support continuing to find more information and giving the sheriff a chance to come back and tell us what else is happening and the questions that you have, Mr. Mayor. Get that information. But if there are folks who are elected who can sit up here and say they have a problem with reducing the jail population, I don't know where we go from that. And so my motion would be to support the concept of expressing support for reducing the overall jail population during COVID, and I so move.
Yeah, we've already got a
That's
motion.
period.
Okay, motion is second. Thank you, Commissioner Lucas. Commissioner Wynn?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me say this in the right way. First, I don't think that personal attacks or on other commissioners is necessary when you disagree with something. To say someone's a lost cause is not professional. Secondly, with the exception of a number of speeding tickets, which I'll admit to, and fines that I paid, I consider myself to be a fairly law-abiding citizen. And if you break the law, if you do the crime, you either pay the fine or do the time. So yes, I have some problems with some people getting out with no bond. I don't know what their issues are. I don't know what they did. But by the way, I want to ask because I'm a law-abiding citizen, I consider myself that, what are low-level charges and offenses? What does that mean to me? Because I've never had those against me unless a speeding ticket is one of those. But I paid that fine. Thank God I didn't have to do my time, but it paid my fine. So yeah, I have some problems with this. If you don't want to be in jail, you don't commit the crime. I mean, it's a pretty simple thing to say that, but it's true. You don't do the crime, you don't do the time, you don't get in jail, you don't have to worry about bail, you don't have to worry about bond, you just don't get in jail. And a lot of these things are are crimes that people should not do. They should know better, if you have to put it that way. And I don't feel like we should give people the advantage of committing these crimes and then getting out with cash-free bail. I mean, that's not fair. That's not right. And I don't think the people that have talked to me in our community wouldn't agree with this.
Thank you, Commissioner Wynn. Certainly, every commissioner deserves to be heard and their opinion matters. I will say, just preface that, I think we're all aware that not everybody in jail have been convicted, and some of those people in jail may not be there rightfully so. So just because you're arrested doesn't necessarily mean you're guilty, and people are innocent and proven guilty. But that's why we have the system we have, the bond system, and that's why some bonds are higher than others. So I don't want to jump to the preface. I also don't want to jump to the preface, and I got Commissioner Clark waiting, that, yes ma'am, just one second, that I don't disagree that I'd like to reduce the jail population. I think we all have a different opinion about who we want to let out of jail and whether or not they may reoffend, because there's a lot of victims out there that certainly don't want certain offenders in jail to get out of jail. Commissioner Wynn, you want to follow up?
Yeah, I do want to follow up because, yeah, I would like to reduce the number of people in our jail. Everybody would, but there is a simple way to do that. And I just think that, and yeah, some people in jail have been accused but not convicted of their crimes yet. I realize all those things, but again, the way you avoid all of that is just to not commit a crime or not come close to committing that crime that makes you look guilty and puts you in jail. I just feel that very strongly about that. And you say, because I didn't have to go to jail, I haven't broken the law as far as anything but speeding, but anyway, let's just move on with it. But I think that I disagree with a lot of things in here.
I understand that, and it's right to do so. I just think that we don't all have a shared language here, and there's certain words that we may say that are buzzwords for other things that may mean something different to you than it may mean to somebody else, and myself. I just think we have to be mindful of that and to learn from it. But it's a good, healthy conversation that we need to have. Commissioner Clark?
Yeah, Commissioner Watkins, I appreciate your work on this. This is, the amendment is really intentional and well done, thank you. The studies you cite, I was going to see if you could send them over to us. Thank you. I've seen the poll report and it's awesome. But just wanted to see the other ones that you cite as well. And I trust they're pretty straightforward statistical citations. I trust you pulled them straight out of it. Thank you. I just would like to read them, all of them. They sound interesting. The second whereas clause, where we say that 500 are identified for being eligible for release. We're pulling these from the JMS dashboard report we received at the work session, I guess? Yes, sir. Okay, cool. On the second page of that, 783, which is 94% of the population, are charged with felonies. We don't have a breakdown of whether that's violent or nonviolent. It's just not in there. But it seems with those two numbers that it's likely that a lot of those 500, while they're eligible for release, like you said, I worry about the insinuation that all 500 should be released if we're using that number directly in a bill that's intentionally written to support the reduction of the jail population. It's not just personally, I imagine that a large group of those people, I mean, like even looking at going back to the second page on the misdemeanors, 5% of it, that's 48 people. 48 people are held in the jail that's 5% of the jail population on misdemeanors. Now, I think a large portion of those probably fit exactly what you're looking for, or looking at, which is folks who are stuck there on some sort of economic hardship, and they shouldn't be there. But I just wonder if you're open to making that number softer, or not even using the whole, I'm trying to think of the best way to say that we have people that are identified for eligible for release, and not stick, so we're not insinuating that folks who have committed violent crimes should be part of this, the overarching intention, good intention and good idea of this ordinance, or resolution, excuse me.
Commissioner Jones?
Oh, sorry.
Did Commissioner Howell want to go? Did you have something to say? I'll let you go first.
Oh, I apologize.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I clicked your button off over there.
I got some information from the sheriff. You know, I'm not arbitrarily in favor of reducing the jail population. I wish we didn't have to have a jail. We all do. But that's not the case. According to the sheriff, we've got 823 in the jail right now. 93% of them are charged with felonies. And 70 are in there charged with murder, 50 with burglary, 11 entering auto, theft by taking, 55. I don't know really what you're calling a low-level offense or a non-violent offense. If you're considering entering auto a non-violent offense, I would disagree. If you're considering theft by taking a non-violent offense, I would disagree. And entering someone's home, even though they may not be there, is a horrifying experience for someone who's experienced that. It will haunt that person for the rest of their life. Even though they weren't even there, someone violated their premises. I don't agree in no cash bail, and there are lots of studies supporting and contradicting what you're saying. If you look to the state of New York, or you look to California, you look to Minnesota, they've had tremendous rise in crimes. Some of that spurred on by no cash bails. People are out walking the streets that shouldn't be there. And I think of this 16-year-old who I don't know, but you know, every life is precious, and someone took his life who maybe shouldn't have been on the street. Maybe Mr. Hernandez shouldn't have been out on the street, or the other guy. So I have a problem with it. I know the system's slower. Everything's slower. Someone told me yesterday that they had applied for unemployment and been approved in January, but they hadn't gotten their checks. Well, Department of Labor, they're short-staffed and behind. The courts are behind. Unfortunately, that's a way of life right now that affects all of us in many phases. And I don't want someone to be in jail that shouldn't be there. And I'm all for looking at individual circumstances, but I think we have a good process in place. I think we have judges who are enforcing the law, and we are a rule of law country, but they're also compassionate. I've seen that. we saw it down here the other day. So I think they show compassion and they look for ways to help people. I've seen that from many judges in many years in Macon-Bibb. But, you know, we have a duty to keep the public safe. I don't think we should be involved in this system. I think if there are some isolated incidences that are brought to our attention, then maybe we ask someone to look into it. But I'm not in favor of the resolution as it's stated.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. Got Commissioner Howell, then Lucas, and then Watkins. Let Mr. Howell go. He hasn't spoken yet, and I'll come to you, and then Ms. Lucas. Mr. Howell.
I just want to say with this resolution, along with everything else that we do, you know, I'm certainly entitled to my opinion. I certainly answer to my constituents. I certainly talk to people. This past week, I've dealt with a 16-year-old that was murdered. I don't know why he was murdered. I don't know the circumstances, and I don't know that the suspect was the guy that did it. What I do know is this: there's a family this morning that has a child that they're burying this week, and it looks like, or at least from what I can see, that it was a guy that got out of jail, that was already in jail for murder. So in that situation, in this, what you're asking me, what's my opinion? You know, I think it's kind of a convoluted discussion that we're blaming everything on COVID. Just because there's COVID, the sheriff sat here last week and told us that 82% of the people in jail now have been in jail before. He says that the jail is not overcrowded, and he says that COVID is almost a non-issue in jail compared to outside. So to tie all this into COVID and say we need to start releasing people out of jail just because of COVID, yeah, I've got a real problem with that. So if my opinion is that if everybody's opinion of that is wrong, except if everybody's opinion is that I'm wrong for that, so be it. But I'm going to vote against this because I don't like the way it's presented. I've got to answer to my constituents about a young man that's dead now, and why did he get out of jail? That's the question that I've been asked. That's the question that bothers me. And whether we tie it into a murder or a petty theft or wherever, we're a county commission. We've got judges in place, we've got DAs in place, we've got sheriffs in place that make those decisions. Just to give a blanket okay approval to make us feel good, I'm sorry, I'm not going to vote for something like that. And I want the records to show that I'm not going to be intimidated if I vote no. Thank you.
Commissioner Watkins, and then Commissioner Lucas.
Thank you, sir. So, again, at this point, the legislation isn't asking the courts, judicial system to do anything other than continue the projects and programs that they have begun and letting them know that we support it. When this conversation first started, there was a picture of folks sleeping on the floor. And at that time, the jail population was sitting around 900 plus. With whatever actions the courts and the sheriff took, the number has steadily been coming down. Apparently the 850 that I quoted in this number is too high based upon the fresh numbers that Commissioner Jones has received. Whatever it is that they're doing, the numbers are beginning to come down. So we talked about the 80, right? And it's not all releasing. So when I use this, so I use the phrase, have been moved from the Bibb LEC, right? Some of those, about 40 of that 80, are folks that have moved on to state prison. So the 500 number, now I know I'm jumping, but the 500 number is also important because they're eligible for release. There's nothing that we've done change, because we've done nothing. But as the world exists today, even if he has murdered 5 people, right, because he has not been convicted, he has not gone before a judge, plead guilty, or got found guilty by a court, which that's the only way you can be guilty here, right, he's eligible for release. What our judge did was place a bond amount that was extremely high because it's murder We assume that people in Macon-Bibb County don't have $100,000 worth of property if you come from 31206 or 31204 zip code. So we set it at a bond amount that he usually can't get to, right? For whatever reason, it seems as though this family had access to an amount. They paid a cash bond to get their family member out of jail using the current system that all of you apparently are in love with. They used that system to get out of jail and then apparently commit another crime. Not using anything other than the fact that he economically could afford to get out of jail. To me, that seems a little wrong. Like, why should money matter? But again, everybody, all 500 of those folks, if somebody stepped up and said, I have the amount of money or you can put my property out, all 500 of them, no matter what they did, can be out tomorrow. That's the rule. I don't see any lawyer correcting me on that. So that's why I say it's eligible for release. That's whether or not it's a felony or whatever. And that's a problem. That is a problem we need to try to address. And it seems as though our judges want to try to address that. Because on the flip side of that, you've got what's more common is folks in there for, one guy was in there for, had been in since 2017 for a theft by taking with shoplifting, which is like $1,000 fine, I believe, and 30 days in jail, but had been in since 2017 because we hadn't gone to court yet. So he immediately, when the district attorney's office contacted, said that he was guilty. And because he's been in for almost 3 years, he got time served and that whole ordeal was over. But somebody who, by law, if we actually sent them to a judge like we're supposed to, but we got 500 people in our courts, in our jail, who have not been convicted. They have not seen the judge to say they're guilty or not guilty. Some of which, again, it's been going on for years. Murderers too, like they're murderers in our Bibb LEC because we have not finished the court case or even started the case. So they sit in there for years, keeping our place. But if we were to get a guilty plea out of them, or finish the case, they automatically leave because the Bibb LEC is not for them. Like, it's not about releasing everybody into the street. It is about the criminal justice system doing its job in full totality, giving people pleas or taking pleas and solving the cases, closing them to get a resolution. This Bibb LEC is a holding area, and we're holding people for years on end for things that 30, 45, 90 days. I'm not creating what a low-level offense is. Again, we have a whole criminal justice system. They have a schedule of this. They went to school for it, get bar association for it. It is their phrase. There's a schedule of offenses that you can and can't do, and I'm not asking it to be amended, but apparently it's what they're doing anyway. I think Judge Sims, last time he was here, highlighted inside of 10 cases that he reviewed that were probation and parole things that were, again, money owed of a minimal sum, but because of, they ended up in jail. I think he agreed, or the example was that I think most, maybe I'm speaking out of turn for the mayor, but it seems as though most folks agreed that that was somewhat frivolous reason to be in jail, particularly for an excessive amount of time. And I think the judge has already started making changes, which the change is to resolve the cases, move people along, because you can't work, you can't make money in jail. I'm talking at length here, but again, I had a lot of things to address, and I hope I did. And I completely understand. We're talking about punishments, prison, criminal justice. I don't expect everybody to be on the same page because it's about something that's at the heart of what it means to be American and in charge. But I do think it's a necessary conversation because just by us having the conversation, there are less people sleeping on the floor now in our jail. $100-ish thousand has been found and is currently being spent at the jail trying to alleviate things. Again, because we asked the question. So we haven't even finished our work here, but the criminal justice system is already moving and is evidenced through a bunch of numbers. But I yield.
Thank you, Commissioner Watkins. Commissioner Lucas?
Thank you. I want to express appreciation to Commissioner Watkins especially, who has pulled a lot of information together and who has been a champion on this. It was my pleasure to sign on as a co-sponsor because I followed a lot of information on projects. One in particular is called the Innocence Project, where you have so many people that are in jail, sentenced to life for crimes that they did not commit. And upon reconsideration and a new trial and all of that, they were exonerated. I worry about that. Also, in our local area, we have the presumption of innocence until someone is proven guilty. And so those are two of the reasons that I fully support this. Earlier, I was trying to get us to see that we could simply pull the caption and express our support for looking into and getting additional information, as I'm sure we will, on this particular item. That was what I wanted to do, and then not have the remainder of it as a part of it, just simply, yeah, exactly. That was what I was trying to say, Mr. Mayor, earlier, that we simply take the caption and use that as an expression of a sentiment which allows us to do further study and remove everything else from what we approve. A simple statement that we're expressing support for the work that's being done from the sheriff, from whomever it is that's working on this, and then we continue to receive information. And Mr. Mayor, that was my motion. That and simply that. But I think upon getting additional information, we'll all have our eyes opened as to some new things that we did not know about our jail, our facility, and maybe it will lead us to a place where we will want to support a new jail. You know, I've heard that brought up a number of times. So, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Attorney, is it appropriate at this time to make the motion that we express support for what would be the proper way to?
So you want to amend the motion and include only the caption item and delete all
Yes.
the rest of the motion?
Yes.
Okay. That's an amended motion. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Bronson, I think Commissioner Clark as well. So we're only going to consider this at this time. We have a motion and second on the amended resolution. Okay. Have any discussion on that particular amendment? Commissioner Jones? Commissioner Jones, you have something on the amendment?
So the caption reads, "A resolution of the Macon-Bibb County Commission requesting immediate action."
No.
Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying expressing support. A resolution expressing support for actions to reduce the overall jail population and everything that's else in the caption. It does not tie us to what actions we support or whatever. It just simply says that we support moving forward with whatever our law enforcement and other folks are doing, and that we get updates, periodic updates. It doesn't tie you to saying, you know, a specific something.
Attorney Groover, if you'll respond briefly to that.
Can I?
Yes, you
ask
can,
if this-
please.
okay. Can it read this way? A resolution of the Macon-Bibb County Commission expressing support of actions to reduce the overall jail population during the COVID pandemic to allow for improved social distancing, safety, and health care. Is that acceptable? Is that what you're,
That
Okay.
was basically it.
okay.
Yeah.
So that would be the motion and the amendment,
Right.
in the second,
Right.
that language, okay.
All
We
right,
do have
thank you.
we have a motion and a second, and Commissioner Jones has a floor on that amendment.
I don't see the need for the motion. I think we all support our court system, the rule of law, and our sheriff, and I think they're doing what they're supposed to do. They've been inhibited by COVID, like everybody else has, and slowed down, and that's affected all of us, and I just don't see the need for the motion. It insinuates that we want you to do more than what you're doing. And as far as I know, they're doing the right things. The picture we saw that the sheriff talked to us about was during a recreation time where they were all in this room. He's given us his record on COVID, and it's extremely good. You compare that to just out in the world, it's a very minimal incidence of COVID. So I don't see the need for the motion. I think it goes without saying we all support our law enforcement, our courts, our judges, and we support them in doing the right thing and processing people through as they're supposed to do according to the law. So that's my thought.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Commissioner Clark?
Oh, wait, I just wanted to make sure that the original author was okay with the amendment, that's it.
Yeah, Commissioner Watkins agreed with that. We do have a motion and a second on the amended, has read aloud by our attorney. So all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? No. That's 2 nays. Motion does carry as amended, and will be sent to the agenda for next week. So at this time, I believe that concludes all of our business today. All the items on the agenda, Commissioner Lucas?
As you recall, last week during our points of personal privilege, I employed folks who were dealing with voting rights to please look at the majority population that's in this community that's in danger of losing their voting rights, including me and the other black members of this this commission. And if you're a minority, and looking around up here, some of you look pretty cute, so you're probably mixed with some different things. So I just wanted to say that we have asked the legal department, several of us, to come up with a resolution which would request our local delegation to oppose attempts at voter suppression. And the other point is, and you will receive this additional information, I think Commissioner Clark has that information. It's going to cost us an awful lot of money if many of these bills are implemented. And so I think some are slowly falling by the wayside, the most ridiculous of them. But there are some that are still saying, Elaine, I don't want you to vote. I'm going to make it as hard as possible for you to vote. And you and your husband and your son and daughter and all of y'all, we're going to make it as hard as possible by law. And so I would like for each of us to kind of look at the legislation. ACCG has a very good explanation on our latest mailing on those bills and what they would do. And then their concern, too, is the unfunded mandates. Our Board of Elections at their last meeting was very, very concerned about many of these changes because they would be required to do some things that would cost money. We fund the Board of Elections, so it would fall to us, those additional costs. So I just wanted to say that. And congratulations, Mr. Mayor, on getting the OLOST, getting that crossed over, and hopefully there can be consensus on the Senate side and we can get a vote on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucas. Commissioner Tillman?
Are we done? I was just going to do a point of personal privilege.
I think that's what we're doing now.
Okay. I think we had a good meeting today. Some things are just more sensitive to others, and I actually wanted to just see how we look sometimes talking amongst each other, and then because some things are just so sensitive. You know, when we're coming up on a year when this whole world was basically shut down, March 17th last year, and just imagine not being able to leave your house, go to the grocery store. Some people couldn't go to the doctor, and yet we all can relate to that, but we can't relate to some folks having to sit in jail. All of it is a part of the same process. This vaccine shot is available. This government, you, Mr. Mayor, your administration, has encouraged folks. I think we as commissioners continue to encourage folks. This thing has trickled down to the average, everyday citizen, and I hope that we all will go and get our vaccine shot. It is available. myvaccinega.com. Regardless of what the wording says, sign up, sign your name, and you'll get a call within 3 to 5 days. I would hate to see anything happen to any of you, any more family members or friends, and so we just have to get our vaccine shot, and we should encourage it. And I hope all of you will receive your vaccine shot. Someone challenged me because I was promoting it so heavily, and I just didn't announce it, but I have received my first vaccine shot probably a couple of weeks ago. And then finally, let's try and keep an open mind about legislation. Sometimes it's according to who's bringing legislation, whether we decide to keep our eyes and ears open. And you know, he's going to find this funny and fascinating, but sometimes Commissioner Jones, I watch him coordinate legislation, how reasonable sometimes. I said, so I can base some stuff off of his reasoning, regardless of who brings legislation, some of the questions he asks. And some people don't understand sometimes or appreciate the work and the value that goes into Commissioner Watkins' research. And so it is a kind of sad. I mean, our mayor has expressed that it's a new day or a new time. We're going to do things differently. Well, you're still the presiding officer. I think we got new commissioners, but the way government works can be the same. But I think if we kind of pay attention to Commissioner Watkins and Jones, and it always interesting how they view legislation, and we judge some stuff on. But I think we ought to just be mindful sometimes, regardless of who's bringing legislation, if we just keep our eyes and ears open. And the reason why I sat down there, because what's sensitive is crime and criminals and people that commit crime. I often tell people we have to be very careful not to get into it about criminals and people that have committed heinous crimes, because it's so easy for us to dwell on those sensitive issues. If you had a loved one sit in jail and be a part of it. I've sat and been a part of the Bibb County LEC. I sat down there 90 days as a teenager. Things have changed, and so it's not a place that you want to be. And so it is sometimes used as a form of punishment when you're giving somebody a bond. Before I walked in here this morning, about 8:30, I was on the phone talking to Judge Sims about this particular issue and some other things that I want to continue to talk to him about. So I think we ought to respect those conversations, and let's be safe, and let's continue to respect those conversations and open our ears and eyes to legislation, but particularly let's start paying attention to those two guys. I mean, some commissioners are more seasoned than others. And I remember before this body started, Attorney Gruber said, he said, Al, believe it or not, you know, y'all agree more than you realize and on issues. And I think when you listen to the mayor, because we're coming back up, and by the time we can meet again, it will be 100 days when we all will have been here. And I think we can say within that 100 days that this commission has really moved and done some things. Whether it's the mayor, the previous commission that has watched a lot of things that we wanted, from blight to homeless, those are things that people can physically see. Whether we agree or not, picking up people's trash. And I think that once we grade, and people will look to grade this entire commission on its first 100 days, and in particular this administration, and I think you can say that it should receive high marks. Although we've had some conversations and spats, I still think there's a key piece that's missing that we have not done in this administration, and I'm going to ask this administration, let's move forward on it, because we're being safe. We need a work session to get to know each other. The one person that I knew and I met and I look forward to talking to, but you know, was a commissioner that sort of switched up some stuff. But one new commissioner has been honest, and that's Mr. Howell. If you ask him something, he's going to be straight up. He don't sugarcoat and hide stuff. If you want to answer, if he gives you his word, he's honest about it. And that's how I knew on day one coming in here where we were going to be standing. And Burgess said, I need to be careful because sometimes I reveal too much. Mm-hmm. But Bill Howell was honest with me, more so than others. And so I want us to be safe. And I want us to realize this 100 days, people are going to judge us. And they like what they see. Some like it, some don't. But I think the grade is going to be high that people will receive and give us over this 100 days. And Mr. Mayor, look forward to continuing this relationship and working. He's waiting on me to call him for lunch and dinner. I'm waiting on him to call me. But it needs to be had. And because I think we've got still some healing to do. So as we move forward, let's say everybody be safe and realize your 100 days has been a good 100 days. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Tillman. I think it's about 80 days next week, though, but don't get me too quick. Commissioner Wynn?
Yes, sir. We'll be out of here before 12
Okay.
since you didn't order us lunch, but
Right.
I just wanted to commend you and the local delegation for our OLA's passing and getting over what I call hump day, a crossover day yesterday. Just wanted to let our public know, and perhaps you'll do this over the coming days, in letting them know what this means to us, the citizens of Macon-Bibb County. Not just that it's an 8% sales tax versus a 7%, but what we're planning to do with that new money that's coming in and how we're going to use it. So I think that the public will look to you, Mr. Mayor, for an explanation of that, and I know you'll be able to provide that. So I want to commend us, you, the delegation, for getting this passed. We've hassled with this for what, 2 or 3 years, and it never passed, and now it's there. Now I hope that we'll use the money in the appropriate way for this community, roll back property taxes and things like that. That's what's going to come to our public, and that's what they want to hear. So commend you for that, and also our local delegation.
Thank you, Commissioner Wynn. Pro Tem Clark?
I just wanted to thank a couple of people right quick before we go. About 3 weeks ago, I received a call from the resident council president of Bonneville Christian Towers, who informed me that the management company, a corporation out of California, has told them that they're not going to help them receive vaccinations, and they were stuck. St. Paul's, other towers, other senior towers around Macon-Bibb County, and assisted living facilities worked really diligently to get their residents vaccinated. And Vinyl Christian Towers was the exception to that in the management company. So I just wanted to say thank you to the Macon Transit Authority, to Craig Ross, to Dr. Jimmy Smith at the Board of Health, who, as soon as they were made aware of this problem, they, working with the Sheriff's Department, set up a plan to get roughly 60 of those residents who wanted vaccinations vaccinated. And they were, while we were meeting today, those buses, those paratransit buses, picked up those folks and they took them to the Board of Health, and they received their first shot, and we've set up logistics plans to get the second shot, and that was not an easy lift, and they went out of their way to do that, and they are, I know that the leadership at Vinyl Christian Towers is incredibly grateful. I'm incredibly grateful, and I'm also incredibly grateful for the increased capacity that we have now because of the mass vaccination center that Governor Kemp put here in Macon-Bibb County. It allowed for something like this to turn on a dime like we did, because we did have increased capacity. So this is an example of government working when a group of folks that aren't from here and don't live here decided they weren't going to help. So it's a neat day, and there's a lot of really good guardian angels to thank. I just didn't want the meeting to end without thanking them. Thank
you, Commissioner Clark. I want to make a few comments myself. The one thing we've talked about as a group is leading by example. And I constantly tell people I'm the one with the microphone, but I realize that I'm part of a team, and I try to give credit where credit's due always, and I try to be inclusive as possible always. The fact that we have an OLAS that passed now from the House over to the Senate is the work of a lot of people. Number one, it started with this commission on January the 19th, who unanimously agreed to ask for a resolution from our local delegation. On yesterday, Pro Tem Clark and myself probably left Atlanta about 12 o'clock last night, headed back after a roller coaster ride dealing with numerous Republicans and Democrats on both sides of the aisle. But what I took out of that event was a vote of 162-0, including 6 of our local delegation on the same page, on the same vote, which is something that hasn't happened. And we say lead by example. Our example to them that we were united them to move forward to help benefit Macon-Bibb County. We are going to have a great 100 days, and it's because of the work and the contribution of each and every commissioner sitting up here. And I certainly recognize I couldn't do what I do without you doing what you do. We have secured the mass vaccination site. That's intentional. That's because of the great relationship that we had established over the last several months with the governor's office. And no matter who sits in that seat, we're going to continue to cooperate and make sure that Macon gets the benefit. And because of that effort, 10,000 people have gotten vaccinated as of last week. And that's something we can all be proud of to try to come through this pandemic. One other update I want to give you, because we had a press conference. I don't want things to fall by the wayside. A few weeks ago, we sent letters out to 57 people that had residential blighted structures and fires. After 10 days or so after they got served their notice on there, we had received responses back from all but 35, which I thought was a very good sign. Over 20 people choosing options 1, 2, or 3, and we've been able to reduce that amount to 35. I'm happy to say that out of those 35, we had every single one of those have been through the asbestos testing already. We made that a priority. They've gone through the testing. We're waiting on the report to see what needs abatement. We'll have that list in the next couple of days, and we're going to begin immediately to demolish, remove those blighted structures that are a danger to our community. And all of you will be invited to that event. We'll keep you up to date on that. We've already started looking at the next 100. We've got a process now that we believe that is a good process, and now we've increased that from looking at 50 to the next 100. We're still using a data-driven process that tells us where to go. Feel free, if there's a particular home that you believe is a danger that's been there a while in your district, to notify code enforcement so we can get on that list. We want to be as inclusive as possible. We will give you updates on the finances of that once we get a good idea. I know Commissioner Watkins had asked some questions about that. I can't tell you what the average cost is going to be until I know what the average cost is going to be. So we did this first group. We'll have a good idea of how many of those structures were had asbestos and lead paint to it, and how much it's going to cost to remove those. So we're working diligently as a group. I want the community to know that we had very fruitful conversation today. I love having conversations like this where people act professionally and use decorum. We went off target a couple of times today, but we're going to overlook that today. But I do ask you to be mindful of the commissioners that are around you. These are our friends. We can vote against each other on a certain issue and then be friends right after and move forward with the next issue. That's something we have to do, is move forward together, and that's what we're trying to do. So I appreciate all the respect that you give each and every one of you. I appreciate you not addressing other commissioners, and I appreciate you addressing each other as your respective title, whether it's Mrs. Wynn or Commissioner Wynn or Commissioner Lucas or Mrs. Lucas, because I think we have to lead by example to the community. I do apologize for not having lunch for you guys today. I was expecting to be out here 45 minutes ago, but that didn't happen. But hey, this is my full-time job. I appreciate the time we have together, and I look forward to meeting with you next Tuesday. That's all we have today. This meeting is hereby adjourned.